Oh, welcome to Syntax. Today, we're talking about starting a new project and making good choices. It's not New Year, New Me.
Good choices.
Yeah, making good choices. It's important. It's not New Year, New Me just yet, but it's never too late to start making good choices in the year. I am a recent convert to something known by most people as planning. And I'm going to talk a little bit about planning projects and how that can make you a better. Yeah, I know. It's actually crazy. I'm the worst planner in the world. And much to the chagrin of my wife, she thinks that my planning skills are abysmal. And I've been trying to prove her wrong by actually planning things. And I'm sure that's just some kind of coordinated effort on her part to get me to actually plan. But I'm going to do it anyways because I'm like that. My name is Scott Jelinski. I'm a developer from Denver. With me, as always, is Wes Boss. What's up, Wes?
Hey, I'm excited to talk about this. I love starting a new project, and sometimes I do a little bit of planning and whatnot, and then I feel good about it. And sometimes I just freaking YOLO it, and about, I don't know, a day or two into a project, I'm starting to have regrets. You know that tattoo, no regrets?
I know all about it.
A couple of those.
Yeah, no regrets for sure. Because, dude, that happens to me more often than not when I just get going, and especially when you're like, if it's just like demos or whatever, that's fine. But the moment you bring a database into this world, then you got a deal. It's like you got a database to take care of. Now you're writing migrations. Yeah. Now you're changing the names of stuff. Now sometimes you're just dumping the whole thing and starting over again. There's all kinds of things here that it can get really frustrating, and I'm here to tell you that I have seen the light for planning and planning projects in various ways to do that in a better way. My name is Scott Jelinski. I already said that.
You already said that. Let's get into it.
Let's talk about Sentry at Sentry.io. This is a great thing to have in your projects. You're starting a new project, slap Sentry in there. You can make sure that you're catching the things that you need to catch, whether that is slow queries, whether that is errors in your application, whether you just want visibility and you're tossing this out to some people and you're starting to give this to alpha users or beta users or real users.
Yeah, whether you vibe coded a bunch of garbage and now you need to fix it all.
Yeah. You're going to want to know without having to be like, oh, what browser are you using? What happened when you click this? You got white screen? I don't know. Well, let's hop on a call. Like, no, you can see all that stuff happen in real time. Maybe not in real time. You can see all that happen in a video, scrub through it, get the errors, connect the logs, do all that stuff, solve your problems, write better code, use AI to do so if you would like. Check it out, sentry.io/syntax. Sign up and get 2 months for free using the coupon code TastyTreat. Let's talk about planning. Mana Canal, Panama. Y'all know about that?
I know about the Panama Canal. I don't know what Canal. What is that a saying?
Yeah, I think that was like I believe that was it President oh man. I didn't know this until just Googling this. Apparently it is a palindrome, which I guess so. It is.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt came up with this as like a or I don't know if he came up with it, but he's the one who popularized it as a way to sell the Panama Canal for people, like a nice little, charge. At least that's what I believe. I could be making up history here. Either way, it's a saying related to the Panama Canal that I'm just learning. I'm so blown away by this being a palindrome that I lost all train of thought. So let's talk about a plan. The best way to make a plan is to really just start with an outline. Start with some descriptions. What is this thing you're building? Maybe even like a couple of high-level big paragraphs to say, hey, this thing I'm building is X, and it's going to do this. One thing that I found was that, like, especially when you're building an app, this process of like taking it from this vague idea, okay, I'm going to build an app that shows an emoji when I'm smiling on camera. That's like That's like a big idea. But then when you start to say, okay, well, this app will have user accounts. Users can see their past reactions. Then you start to think about what types of other interactions or the way it's going to be laid out. Just some high level stuff about this. You can just do it in like kind of a bulleted point, like outline. I think that works really well in terms of just getting some of your ideas on paper. But as you work through this, you can start really high level and start to really distill things down into much more of like a pseudocode style of doing things, because ultimately when we have a project, you're going to need most likely data structures, you're going to
Yeah.
need most likely routing structures, you're going to need some like kind of logic or routes or access and roles and those types of things. So you can take this from these high level picture ideas and then break it down into what are the views this application will have? And I like to do this in kind of like a simplified pseudo code where I'll do like / and build the routing structure.
Yeah.
It's nice to do this because it's just text in a text file. It's not actually routes. It's so much easier to change the routing structure when it's just text
When
in
it's
a text
just
file.
text. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well. I tend to use mind mapping software as things get a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
So mind mapping software is this idea where you have like a node and you can break that off into multiple nodes, and you can break that off into more nodes. And I find that to be a little bit nicer than just straight up text, because text is very linear, and programming is not linear, right?
Yeah.
There's things need to talk to each other and they need to split off. And if you can just throw and I also find just the way that my brain works, being able to spitball ideas and look at where it's at, I find that the visual map of a mind map is much more helpful. And then also when it comes time to actually implementing it, I can get this like, what do I work on next? You know, you're kind of scattered, but when there's a very clear, like, all right, here's the database, here's the authentication, here's the access control, you can kind of just look at that one piece and chip away at that.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. I prefer the linear nature of this because the moment it gets too much into like really on this page, here's everything I can do, everywhere I can go, then I guess at that point I am getting a little too deep into it. But again, I do like the aesthetic and visual of that. I've like kind of been working off of this, and I'll post it here in the show notes. I'll have it in the show notes. It's really simplified, kind of just like markdown approach to coming up with routes. What is the route? What can a user do? What can they see? When something is like just very basic kind of pseudo logic for different routes, where they can go, what they can do, those types of things. But I also kind of take an approach of like having a very simplified means of establishing data structures. So data is one of those things that as you work through this, you start to think of like, okay, what am I actually going to need in my database to accomplish this? And some people might just start with a schema, but I found it to be just generally useful to even establish some kind of your own general pseudocode for defining, data structures, whether you just say, all right, what are we going to need for this thing? It's going to need a name. It's going to be a string. We're going to need a URL. It's going to be a string, right? So real basic stuff that's not even just like code. It's like, here's the data structures, because you can have your routes. Generally, you can have your data structures, you can have your sort of pseudo logic here, and you can have a high level of what this application does. Who can do what is the logic, or what is the access for these types of things? And if you build out this text-based version of this all, there's something really awesome that happens in modern web development here, is that, man, LLMs are actually pretty good at this. So if I give it the context of what I'm trying to build, I give it the context of these are the views I have in mind, and this is the data structure I have in mind, and this is some of the general logic I have in mind, you can paste that into any LLM. And I'm not talking about using even like a IDE-based Cursor, Cloud Code, any of this stuff. I'm talking about just paste it into ChatGPT and say like, what am I missing here? Have I thought about everything? Because when I did this in my most recent iteration, it gave me some really interesting things that I hadn't thought of. Like, well, perhaps you'll want this type of visibility toggle. And I'm thinking, I don't need that. And then you think about it for a couple minutes, and you're like, actually, it would be nice to have now.
Yeah.
in the database so that I don't have to add it later if I actually want it and then I have to account for it not being there. So it can really add some robustness to your data plans, and it can get you going back and forth.
It's the same thing when you like just talk something through with a coworker as well, right? There's things that you may not have thought about, or there are approaches that you are thinking, which is totally the wrong way to go about it. And hashing that out earlier is better. Like I talked a couple episodes ago how I was just like, I don't know, like a couple hours in on coding something, and I realized this is not the best approach. After talking to somebody, they're like,
Totally.
yeah, you could fix that, but like why are you even doing it this way at first? And I kind of wish I had hashed that out much earlier before I actually cut my teeth in the code.
Yeah, totally. Hashing this stuff out in your brain can really, really help. But also, pasting it into an LLM, they might give you a bunch of stuff that you don't need. But I want to be clear, this is not like vibe coding here. This is like you are crafting this thing, and then you are using AI to solidify it, to make sure you're not forgetting things, to, it might not be perfect at the end of the day, but to really lock in. And what I don't suggest is just copying it straight from the AI, saying, all right, this is what they gave me, this is what I'll use. You think critically and say, all right, is this something I want? Whatever. So you've got your high-level plan. Let's talk about picking tech. What tech choices can you make that are actually a good choice for this project? I am so guilty of just picking the shit that I want to pick and not considering if it's even good for the project I'm building.
Yeah, man. The thing that always gets me with the tech is a database. I always want something that is as fast as possible, because usually when I'm building something, I get to a point where I'm thinking, now's a point where I want to save something.
Yes, right.
And then I was like, I don't want to do a whole schema and spin up the database and whatnot. And SQLite has made that a lot easier for me. But still, it's a bit of a pain. But I don't know. That's usually like the hang up for me.
I'll tell you where I've gotten some smoothness here is in general, if you've written out the kind of ideas for the data structures you have and you have that pseudocode going, I have found AI being very good at that to just dump it into an ORM language. Sometimes it doesn't have the most modern Drizzle syntax or whatever, but you can get that pseudocode into database schemas in 2 seconds flat, confirm that it works, and then if you already have a good flow with Drizzle set up, man, all you need is a dang Postgres or whatever URL. And then, one thing that Drizzle added was the push command, which means you don't have to generate migrations. You just push the changes for when you're first starting a project. And that, to me, that flow is just like, all right, I'm going to get this going. I got my connection string. I made it with Tables Plus or whatever. I'm going to click push up, and then I have my database.
Yeah, if you don't
Bingo,
have any
I'm
production stuff yet, or you don't necessarily care about any of the data in that database just yet, you can just do that. And then later, once you start having actual users and data you care about, that's when you dip into the migrations.
Yeah, exactly. And once things are a bit more solidified. So let's talk about picking tech. This is what type of project? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Is this a long-term project? Is this a project that is going to need robustness, a lot of people working on it, or you're going to be working on it? You want to make money on it. You want it to exist for a long time. If it's a long-term project, you're going to make solid, established choices, like pick stuff that is not going anywhere. Pick stuff that you can host anywhere. Pick stuff that possibly others can work in or that are going to work well with the thing you're trying to build. So let's say you're building an application that needs an online connection all the time. Well, going on a local first flow, sure, that can be beneficial if you're going for speed, but it doesn't if the app doesn't need it, it doesn't need it. Know what the app needs and go from there. Does this thing actually work best in a CMS type of context? Build on a dang CMS. Don't write your own for this. Know what you're building and why, and make choices that fit the long-term goals of this project.
Yeah, in most cases, choose tech that will solve your problems, not the other way around.
Yes.
I'm maybe
I'm
guilty
so
of this
guilty
just
of
because
this.
I
No,
want
I'm
to try
so
stuff
guilty.
out,
Yeah.
but I guess it's also good to just grab new tech just for the sake of trying it. But
I think that's a
always
different even type
delicate
of
balance.
project.
I agree. It's more of like a learning project, right? And if it's a little bit of a lower stakes project, I will try to go out of my way to try 2 or 3 new things,
Yes.
Maybe I'll try some of the new local first stuff that we've been talking about. Maybe I'm going to not use React on something and I'll pick up. Maybe I want to try some of the new Svelte stuff that's out. That's a good time to learn something.
Yeah, I'm all about learning things. And so I certainly don't mind picking 1 or 2 little new things in any project that I'm trying to either do fast or work on for a long. I don't mind doing that. But like, if the goal of the project isn't straight up just learning, I'm only picking like a few little new things that I know are probably good choices. Is this project going to be open source? If it is, you're going to want to use things that possibly others will know. Now, you want to be picking things that you know really well if you're the main author on it, but like picking some obscure libraries in addition to something, or even picking a lot of libraries if you're doing like an open source project that other people might be using. So you have to make these choices knowing like what the context this thing will exist in. If you're in a team, like I made I'm going to say this right now, a dumbass choice. When we had our syntax site, I wrote a preheating script for it to like seed the database and I wrote it in Rust. Why? I felt like it. I wanted to. And then ended up being a giant pain in the ass because now nobody else can work on it. Nobody else knows Rust, or they got to build it. And it's like, I ended up rewriting it in Node because it's like, why did I make that choice? That was such a selfish, bad choice. So, like, really just consider the team, their skills, what's going to be
The
smooth
people
for
that are
everyone to
using
work
it.
on.
Yeah, man, I have that so many times in my house where you build something. Like I went out of my way to make this whole charging infrastructure for our families, like iPads and whatnot. And the kids kept snapping all the cords. So I got these like magnetic charging cords and whatnot. And it was beautiful, right? We had like 6 magnetic charging cords. They were all perfectly in a line, and all they had to do is slot their iPad in and click, and then put their headphones on the hook and click, and the things were charging. And then like 3 weeks later, it's a rat's nest. The kids have pulled the little magnet chargers out of it because they can't find the right one, and it's just absolute nightmare. Kids are going into my bedroom to use our charger because I can't find the right one. And I'm just like,
who did you make it for? Did you make it for you?
I made it for me because it's just like, it's not, I guess it wasn't the right amount of usability. And when things like that happen, you see this with GitHub Actions as well, right? People just ignore when a GitHub action will fail because it's just like, I don't know. It just does, half the time it fails, and I can't fuss with it and screw it, Yeah. So it drives me nuts. But like, if things are not usable enough for the people you make them for, they're not going to end up using them. They're just going to go around it.
Yeah, that's so true. Learning, if you're picking this project specifically to learn, pick a bunch of things that you want to learn, but don't pick too many things, because there's nothing more of a killer to learning than hitting some kind of road bump that you can't get past in how these new technologies connect to each other, because it's like the connection between new things that you've never worked before that usually you find yourself in trouble. So like, for instance, I was trying to pick up Better Auth at the same time I was trying to pick up Live View and Svelte with their new stuff, but I wasn't actually using that stuff. And I've worked with Better Auth, but not the way that I had been planning on connecting it to Live View. And I had never worked with Live View at all or with Svelte. So I had to figure out how this works with this, and then this works with like that bit. Once something went wrong, I was like, I don't even know who's at fault here. I mean, I'm at fault,
and
but I don't know.
The only person in the world who has combined those things, and you're kind of up a creek figuring it out yourself.
And then guess what? I quit the dang project. So, it's like that's ultimately where it stops. And then what happens? You don't learn. So pick enough things that you're actually learning. You're actually picking things up. You're actually using that time wisely. But don't pick too many things that are too mysterious that you're going to find yourself in a place where you're at a dead end. Also, pick things that work well together. Don't pick a bunch of assorted technologies that you have no idea if they do work well together. Or I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm going to pick a new library like LiveView or whatever, and then I'm going to pair it with Svelte because I like Svelte, but there's no bindings for it. So now I'm writing my own bindings. Next thing you know, I got to be responsible for those bindings, and those bindings don't work, and I got to get deep in. Pick things that work well together. Yeah.
Let's talk about AI, because one interesting bit about using AI to build these products is your planning is so much more important. Your documentation for how things work and what you want to do is so much more important than it used to be, because you need to be able to give the AI something. So what do you got here for the AI part of this?
Yeah, it's actually funny because Kiro is one of the reasons, Kiro, the new editor IDE from Amazon. And I'm not actually even currently using Kiro right now. I'm currently using VS Code again. Kiro is one of the things that really solidified some of this stuff for me. Kiro has a really great way of creating steering documents for your product. And I think this is really super a good idea on things that you're working. Now, Kiro generates these for you. So this is generated. Let's see, the project and structure, it can generate several different types of steering documents, whether it is the product itself, the entire application, what the thing is, what it is and what's its purpose, the structure document that's going to show the directory structure, what the files are doing and where to find things. You might think that this is something that the AI can just glean from looking at your project, but sometimes these projects don't contain all of the information that you would want them to contain. You're starting fresh. I couldn't even tell you how many times it's the AI is well, let me just create this inside of your source folder, this components folder. Let me dump some random ass components in here instead of putting them in the structured way that you'd want to have them. Mm-hmm. So these steering docs can actually lead you to have much better structure so that it knows where to put things. It can save you a lot of time. This is if you're working with AI while you're coding. And likewise, same thing, tech choices. What tech choices you're using and why. Now, again, these are generated by AI, and they can do a good job of generating these docs, but they really need your hand to be effective. Because otherwise, AI will lean towards the solution that it finds the most, and therefore it's going to try to shoehorn that into your project. And if you have clearly established guidelines on this is what you want to use, when you want to use it, and what you want to use it for, then it's going to do much, much less of that. I've even found, I don't know if you found this, in VS Code, I found that even including the MCP tools that I want to use, use Context 7 to pull the latest version of the docs, and telling it that in the steering docs, I have found that to be effective. I don't know if it is or if it's just it's going to use Context 7 anyways, but I found it to be effective. Yeah.
Yeah. Cursor now has this thing called memories where it will watch your chat for things that you told it, and it will try to remember that, similar to how you would think of that ahead of time and throw that in a rules file. But now I'm just looking at what my memories were of it's a hilarious thing to call it, but it's just watch your chat, and it says the user prefers that the assistant not start development server automatically as they will run it themselves. That's one annoying thing that kept doing. Be all right, let's start the server now. It's I know I'm already doing that in the thing. And the other one says the user prefers React code to be organized as proper React project with separate component files and shared code. Avoid using template strings and striving for a clean and perfect implementation. That wasn't a very good one. And then it's also suggesting another one now. The user prefers front-end specific authentication logic be moved directly to the file where it is used and not to share back-end and front-end. We're going to be recording this episode
That's
next,
so funny.
which is hilarious. Yeah. Essentially says, don't put your back-end off in the same file that's loaded into your front-end application. No shit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I should. Okay. No bugs, please. Yeah.
Yeah. No
This
bugs,
user prefers
please.
if I don't write bugs that
Yeah,
release the
you got to tell
IDs
it
of
that.
several people. That starting a dev server is something that Kiro really loves to do, and I like started on VS Code because they have some like new to do structure inside of their chat and some like really
Yeah,
interesting things that are in the new VS Code stuff. And I was just getting used to it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so happy that it's not going to constantly, like every single 10 minutes, ask me for my dev server or try to start a dev server."
that
And it
whole
does.
integration needs to be better because
It does.
like even if I've been trying to use like the built-in terminal to VS Code or Cursor
Yeah.
lately, and it feels like it forgets about that. It's running it already
It
sometimes.
forgets that it's running it. If
Yeah,
it like requires authentication to get to the point where you're getting to, it can't find it anyways because it's not doesn't have the credentials or
yeah.
whatever. There's so many darn issues with it. It works in like a very very small subset of applications that I've found. So annoying
One thing
stuff.
I'm really excited about is for the new TypeScript language server that's written in Go to make its
Mm,
way into to be a default because
yeah.
often the AI will try to run like a TSC on my entire code base to make
Hmm.
sure there's no type errors across the entire project, and it drives me nuts because
Same.
you can turn on like TypeScript checking for your entire project. It's an experimental setting in your editor, but like it can be very slow, right? Because it's running it. But now that we have the new like the 10 times faster TypeScript TSC or the other one that's coming, you're going to be able to type check your entire project like on key up or something crazy like that. And then it's going to know, all right, was one change here. Does that ripple through and make any other type errors throughout your entire project?
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. All right. That's some tips I have here. Last part is get to darn work. Get to work. You're going to find things that your planning could not have planned for. That's just how it is. One thing that I've found to be good again is like using AI to transpose some of your pseudocode into real code. It depends on what it is. It works especially well for like pseudo database structures and ORMs, right? Because that's like a really easy transition for that to make. It's really just like modifying syntax. I find it less to be good at with UI stuff, mostly because I'm very particular about my UI code. I'm very particular about my CSS. I like almost never want AI writing CSS anymore. I found it to be very abysmal. But LLMs are good at converting things that could be done through a really fancy transform. So use that where possible. Another thing I do is I take the skeleton of the routing structure and things like that, and before I write any code, I just build out that entire structure exactly how I planned it out. You build out the structure, you create the route files, and inside of those route files, I paste in my pseudo logic that I had thought of. I paste in the things that I need to do in that file, the things that why this file exists, etc., etc. And that way, when I come to it later, I see exactly what I'm supposed to be accomplishing in this file. And you're going to come up with things along the way. That's not the point. Even as I go through things like that and I start actually writing real code, which, I'm doing by hand, or I guess with the help of an LLM, you leave to-dos in here for you to come back in later. Like, oh, I didn't think about this to-do. I got to think about this when I reapproach this. Or let's say there's a function you can't implement right now. Just write the function and drop a to-do in that function. I'm talking about just getting going on a project or things like that. Now, obviously, if you're the type of person who's working in a big team with a lot of people, this is going to be an established project, you can come up with this workflow on getting started. But I like having a skeleton, and I am often working by myself. So for me, these things work really well.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I'm new to planning. So if you think any of this sounds like a bad idea, it sounds so
The
stupid.
comments
Yeah.
on this are going to be like Scott discovers planning. It's going to be good.
That is like, so correct. I honestly, this weekend, I was planning these things and I was doing all these plans. I'm like, oh, well, actually pretty good. This is pretty cool,
Yeah,
which,
I need to
yeah,
do that
ridiculous.
for dinner. Man, it drives my wife crazy. She's like, "What's
Same.
for dinner?" I was like, "It's like
Oh.
5:07." I was like, "I'm gonna open the fridge and just kind of look for stuff." And it also drives me nuts as well. So
Yeah,
need to be able to
I get
plan.
bad anxiety about that because I don't cook most of the nights. In fact, we're lucky if I cook once a week.
Okay.
But anytime Courtney's like, "Oh, you're cooking tonight," I'm like, "Oh, what am I making?" And I have enough things that I can make, but I just everything goes blank at that moment.
Oh yeah, I can't plan that either. Same with the grocery shopping. Like I
Yes.
can't have a list either. It drives me nuts. I just need to bounce around and pick up stuff that looks good.
You know what? I we used to live a block away from Whole Foods, like a block. And it was so nice because you'd be like, what am I making today? I don't know, maybe go walk to Whole Foods and pick out some stuff. And it's like moving away from that Whole Foods was all of a sudden like, oh man, now I gotta like actually know what I'm making. And if I forget
Yeah.
something, I gotta get in the car. Yeah. All right, so we are knee deep in Hack Week over here, which is why we're talking about projects. We will catch you in the next episode. We're going to be talking about some AI stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll catch you in the next one. If you enjoyed this show, leave a comment below. Smash that subscribe button. Tell your friends. All those things. We're on YouTube, folks, and these video episodes are really nice and fun on YouTube. So if you're only an audio listener, give us a try on video on Spotify too. So if you're a Spotify fan, also do video over there. Check us out, Syntax FM on YouTube. As always, we'll catch you in the next one.
Peace.
Peace.